With the Division 2 currently struggling to add new and meaningful content, lacking the ability to fix many crashing issues, especially on PC, or just having nothing to show in regards to the much anticipated specialization rework that was announced way back in October of 2021, it makes you wonder just how close we are to the actual end for this game. And yet, somehow a tiny glimmer of light is giving many in the community some actual hope. Although we do know very little about it, a Division 1 name drop and possibly token exotic has caused a stir of speculation. So in this video, I wanted to take a look at the item known as the Ninjabike Messenger Bag and how or if it could actually compete almost 6 years since first dropping in the original Tom Clancy's The Division. Now I do want to talk briefly on the history of the bag because I think that actually draws a good parallel to how it can stack up in Division 2 versus why it was, a rather good piece in Division 1. Now, of course, named armor was finally added to the Division 1 in patch 1.5, which included the high-end Ninjabike bag. However, its initial form was actually designed to assist farmers in the Dark Zone. The original talent let players drop an additional contaminated item as hidden, meaning basically that it couldn't be picked up by someone after you died. And upon death, it also decreased your XP loss from the DZ. Now, as you can guess, this was not a very sought-after item. However, it is worth pointing out that the original bag was designed for a PvE Dark Zone agent trying to avoid losing loot and experience. So, that's kind of a different take on the backpack as we know it mostly today. And this might influence how the item rolls when it's actually finally released sometime here in Season 12, or hopefully it's not delayed. Now, between 1.7, when it was actually updated in 1.8, we got a Ninjabike that was fairly better than what many of us might remember it as originally being. And almost a year after the Ninjabike finally came out, it did get the useful overhaul of its talent, which allowed you to basically swap it in with any and every Division 1 gear set to unlock specific bonuses that you actually wanted. And it definitely had some nice uses during the few short months it had before classified gear pretty much usurped all of its power. While not being the most dominant item in the game, it did give rise to a fair number of effective combos. Something off the top of my head like D3 and Predator's Mark, or even D3 and Banshee. Plus there were plenty of Reclaimer, Tactician, and Firecrest combos and multiple different combinations that I used to use a lot. Plus there was a few other Nomad combos, and I'm just going to keep the list short there, but there was a lot of potential with the Ninjabike because there wasn't too many other options for this kind of gear item. However, it was not really what I would call a game changer. It simply offered new options in a game that hardly had the gear and talent support when you actually compare it to Division 2. So yes, before classified gear, it was a nice item, but again, this might have been due to the devs' abysmal handling of Division 1 rather than the item itself. And like I said, I actually wanted to talk about the impact comparing the two, D1 versus D2. So what does this new exotic mean for the Division 2? Well, I've been going through the stats and formulating some ideas, but I think one of the biggest issues is just the neglected place D1 was in when the Ninjabike dropped compared to the much more vast gear support that Division 2 has pretty much had its entire lifespan, which is, of course, been a couple years longer now. Now, Division 1, which I do feel was maybe a better experience overall, had far fewer gear options with no such thing as brand bonuses, and honestly, the backpack only competed directly with about 5 talents, and they were almost all designed for skill enhancement of some sort. So the backpack slot was, for many builds, just a gear set slot, or it was easily replaced because you didn't really necessarily want what it had. It wasn't something that you were trying to go for. It was kind of just more like, okay, this is the best option right now, so I'll just pick that. So in essence, the Ninjabike was good because very few options existed to actually compete with it, and it allowed you to make a more specific or customized build that you didn't really have the option to do normally in Division 1. In the Division 2, however, this is not generally the case. While there may be some, I wish a talent did this kind of issues, a lot of the player power currently comes from the backpack, specifically the talents they have. Not only for high-end gear, but also for the gear sets. This in turn means that for the Ninjabike to actually shine, it needs to provide a very large amount of potential power in whatever way. And adding, in many cases, a few extra rolls from brands or gear sets is not going to overcome the loss of your backpack talent. Now, this is not to say that it will always perform worse, but it is likely not going to win the biggest EPEAN awards in the firing range. To say it plainly, the Division 1 suffered from a distinct lack of gear options, and this made the Ninjabike more useful. The Division 2 does not suffer from these same problems, and thus the Ninjabike almost seems kind of redundant. And this kind of brings us into the issue, well, how could it roll? Could it actually be a good piece? And based on a poll I ran a few days ago, it is pretty clear that most of you hope it is a triple core like we have with the Memento. So 1 red, 1 blue, 1 yellow, which makes sense because in D1 it could slot into any build with any stats, which attributed to it being useful. And while making this video, I also watched a video from Buzz Lightyear making the case for the backpack likely being armor based. Now, I might not like it being locked in that form, but the case could be made for why it should be like that. While I think that making it all red with crit, or all blue with health and armor on kill, or maybe even yellow with haste and efficiency can drastically limit its use, I have to say I hope it offers something better and maybe more interesting than just a Memento copy and paste job. Largely because the Memento still offers some of the best bonuses in the game, and a few generic bonuses from the brands or gear sets won't really compensate for this in most cases. Like I said earlier, the Ninjabike has 2 origins to draw from. First, it was a more farmer-oriented DZ item, and then it became a more or less jack-of-all-trades item after 1.7. So what can be done to actually tie some of these themes together? Well, as we saw with the Memento, just because most gear follows a pattern does not mean all gear has to. And while making speculations of what it could have can be fun, I think it is actually important to first point out some flaws that might require it to have a more unique system than what we have currently seen. That is, if you at least want the backpack to have like a real use and be an interesting part of the game, and not something that we just, put in the stash forever. So what I did was I just looked through all the gear in the game. Tried to find some of the most common themes or stats and pair them up to get a feel for how the end result would actually be. Now, since I don't know what the ninjas' roles will actually be, I just kind of assumed they would be, the best in slot or the best things that I would actually want for the build, and kind of went off from there. So now if we actually compare a lot of these stats together, if we actually look at, the way that at least I was trying to see it, right? What we know from at least the little information that was released on the Ninjabike is that it is going to give you 1 extra set bonus for the pieces that you have. So meaning if you have 1 piece of 511, you will get 10% health and 20% incoming. If you have 2 pieces of 511, you're going to get, your normal bonuses of 10% health, 20% incoming, but then the backpack is going to give you another piece and is going to be 10% hazard protection. Now, of course, what this means is every time you add a duplicate piece, you're kind of hurting yourself because you're only getting 1 extra per brand, right? So if instead of having 2 511s, I had a 511 and an Araldi, I'm going to get the 10% health, the 20% incoming healing, but I'm also going to get the 10% marksman rifle damage and the 15% headshot damage. Now, obviously, I'm not, going to plan on making a build that pairs those 2 up. I'm just saying that if I have 2 pieces and they're different, I'm going to get 4 bonuses, whereas if I have 2 pieces that are the same, I'm only going to get 3 bonuses. So what this means to me is that I generally want to keep it in the single set bonus. I want to look at which ones have the best 1 piece and which ones have the best 2 pieces. For example, if I was going for a sniper build, Araldi would be great because marksman and headshot, right? Very simple, very easy to understand. If I was going for a run and, rush up shotgun type build, yeah, Badger Tough with shotgun damage and armor might be something that I want. And of course, there's very few exceptions to this, maybe with the case of like Empress International, because 10% skill efficiency is such a strong stat for skill builds, I might want to have 2 pieces there. But look, would I want to have Fenris? I don't know, that's up to you. I mean, if you have 1 piece of Fenris, you get the AR damage, but you're also getting 20% reload speed. How important is 20% reload speed to you? Well, probably not very much. Are you going to have 2 pieces of Fenris to get that stability? Again, probably no. The same thing with Gilligard. while people like the 5% for total armor, does anybody really want the 10% for health? Most likely no. Are you going to get 2 pieces there just so you can get that 1% armor regen? Again, probably not, because if you wanted a regen build, you're going to probably just use the memento for that 3% once you get it fully stacked. So it doesn't really make much sense to waste rolls trying to get this. But anyway, so that's kind of what I did. I paired it up, tried to find the best pieces for, the best builds, right? So like if I wanted an explosive build, China Light with cooldown and explosive damage, that's pretty good. All right. If I wanted to, increase that a little bit more than, maybe is more common, normally I would need 2 pieces of Grupo, which would be kind of difficult to roll for the average player. I mean, you'd have to get, the perfect yellow rolls with the ability to roll off your red damage into yellow skill tier. Of course, Grupo, because it comes with crit damage in the first slot, it kind of seems like a waste to a lot of players. But if I can get that second bonus right away, which 15% is a multiplicative bonus on top of your explosives, that's a very nice thing to have. That's a lot of damage. So this could be incredibly useful. Pairing this up, China Light, Grupo, I mean, you can get some good damage there. And then of course you can go with your skill and then of course you can go with skill efficiency from your Empress and, call it a day. Pretty simple. But the real question that I was having was, is it actually worth it? Like I said, you are losing this backpack talent. And a lot of times the backpack talent is pretty huge. I mean, you're looking at anywhere from like 15 to 25% total weapon damage or skill damage. I mean, it's a huge bonus. And in the most, and honestly, in most situations, you're not looking for these same kind of, huge bonuses. I mean, look, tip of the spear, 10% weapon damage. That's only an additive bonus. It's a very small, as far as like a DPS build goes, if you've already got a fully kitted out DPS build, you're probably looking at something close to, 150% weapon damage on your build anyway. And then trying to say like, well, 10% is going to have a huge effect because I put it in there now. It's not. It's going to be relatively small in terms of the damage that you actually gain from it. And so this is kind of the thing that I was looking at over and over again, trying to figure out what is actually going to be useful on, our builds. And, I try to kind of make up some combinations. Like here, I just put together something that's fairly common currently, and that would be Overlord, Petrov, Fenris, Providence, and Walker. And of course, I reserved that, 6th slot for the Ninjabike. But, if you're getting Overlord and Petrov for the contractors and the Foxes, right? But again, these bonuses are kind of a waste. Yeah, you're still getting the 8% out of cover and the 8% damage to armor, which are still probably really good bonuses. I mean, even in this environment. But, these bonuses right here for this kind of, AR build, they're going to seem like you're wasting a lot of slots, right? And then if you look at Fenris itself, you've got your AR damage, but then you got reload speed. Now, while these, accuracy, weapon handling, reload speed aren't the worst stats to have as a DPS person, they're generally not something that you're aiming at. You'd rather, just drop the enemy in one magazine than have to worry about, reloading, taking cover, or, any of that stuff. You'd rather just get it done with and not have to worry about it. You'd rather have more damage than what you're going to get from like 1 or 2 missed shots. I mean, that kind of thing. But of course, you've got Providence, which is a pretty good piece. I mean, you got 15% headshot damage and 10% crit chance, and Walker Harris, 5% weapon damage and damage to armor. So by adding the backpack, yeah, you are getting these 2 talents, right? Or these 2 set bonuses right here, which can be really good. But in this build, is this really worth losing a talent for? Like, let's say vigilance. I know, it's really easy to lose vigilance, but it also comes back really quickly. But that's like 25% total weapon bonus right there. 25% total weapon damage. I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to choose this kind of build to use with the Ninjabike. So it means that the Ninjabike's not going to be plug and play. You're not going to just take your builds and be like, okay, I'm going to make this build. I'm going to put the Ninjabike in there just to replace whatever backpack was there. No, you're probably not going to do that. In the vast majority of the cases, you're not going to do it. It's going to require you to farm new pieces, new gear, and possibly new rolls, which is, of course, going to aid in the frustration of, just controlling how much loot you actually have in your storage space. It could be a disaster for a lot of players, right? Another combination that I was looking at was Araldi, pairing that with the Habsburg, Walker Harris, and Hotshot, right? So we've got marksman rifle damage, we got headshot damage, marksman rifle damage, weapon damage, and damage to armor. All of these sound like really great combinations. And then, of course, with Hotshot, I'm going to put 2 pieces on there, and I'm going to get 30% marksman rifle damage, 30% headshot damage, and, of course, it comes with a bonus of 30% stability, at least from what I've seen. So these numbers look massive. And yet, with the Ninjabike backpack, for a sniper role, snipers are generally designed not to be hit. So vigilance would be especially useful in a build like this. But what you see with the numbers is that for the backpack to really compete with this same build, what you're going to need is something like 100% headshot damage on the backpack alone to give you, similar damage numbers to other talents. And that's just probably not going to happen. I don't think they're going to be adding 100% weapon or 100% headshot damage to the Ninjabike backpack. And if they did, that would be ridiculous, but it would also probably be abused by every other build in the game because, 100% headshot damage is just insane to get. Now, where can you go from there? If you move into like something like Sokolov, like one combination that I was kind of like, well, could this be good? You add the 10% SMG damage, 15% crit damage, and then you add strikers to try to get this extra rate of fire bonus, and then maybe negotiators for this 15% crit chance and 20% critical hit damage. Now, of course, on paper, again, that looks nice, but then you have to realize that you're losing 2 stats from strikers, and of course 2 stats from negotiators, which could be crit damage, crit chance, or headshot damage, whatever. You're losing all those. You're also still losing your talent, and it kind of makes it look like, again, this kind of combination isn't going to be worth it. Would you maybe want to use 3-piece negotiators so you can have that 4-piece bonus? Add an extra Sokolov to get the crit chance, and then you got 3-piece negotiators and the backpack with Ninja. Well, maybe, but negotiators, a lot of that damage comes from the backpack again. You're looking at that talent that moves it from like 60% damage to 100% damage of your crit hits. So, it depends on how you're using it, but a lot of the times I'm looking at it like, well, without the backpack talent, some of these gear sets are just completely useless. Right? And so one that I actually kind of tried to create more in the vein of having the Ninjabike as a full focus, was this fairly decent combination, which would be Cheska, Providence, Sokolov, Walker, and Yal. Obviously, with these additional hazard protections, you can see I'm probably trying to go for that, hazard build and just adding as much damage to it as I can. And while these bonuses are pretty good, I don't think it's going to be anything that's anything special to write home about, let's just say it like that. Because, a lot of the times if you're running a hazard protected, high weapon damage build, you're usually, at least especially if you're doing SMG, you're usually adding a fair bit of armor into this build, right? And when you added armor, what talents did you want on an SMG build? Usually it was Adrenaline Rush and Intimidate, because that would be kind of the key to helping you stay alive when you didn't have, full survivability on the table, right? You had most of your focus was in weapon damage, and your talents were used to keep you survive. Well, yeah, you can get 90% hazard protection fairly easily, as long as you have the full shade level maxed out. And then you got the 20% from your gear here. And then if you just wanted, 100% bleed or 100% burn resistance, you could just have one of those mods. But the point is, you're going to sacrifice a lot of things by not having that talent again. So even though these numbers right here do look very tempting, 10% extra crit chance, 15% crit damage. With these crit chance and using an SMG, you're basically not going to need to have any crit chance rolls on your actual gear. You can focus all on crit damage and headshot damage, which will give you a boost of damage. But I would consider this mostly a PvP build. You're looking at, just a huge lack of survivability. But, if you look at, again, skill builds, they kind of encounter the same thing. You can give all these explosive damage bonuses and get the skill efficiency, but the truth is, losing that 25% or whatever total skill damage from your actual talents does cost you a lot of damage in the long run. So maybe you can make a more hybrid build that's a little bit better at, staying alive, and maybe can deal some more damage with the weapon. But as far as your skills go, they're probably going to be weaker. And, one of the only real true, I guess, builds that I saw that might be easier for more players would just be a 100% hazard protection, 100% pulse resistance style build. Now, if you included Eclipse Protocol, you can have, obviously, that 30% hazard protection with 2 pieces because of the Ninjabike. You add 2 pieces of Yawl, and now suddenly you've got 10% hazard protection and 40% pulse resistance. Then you throw in a Cheska, and you get the crit and the hazard protection. So this does give you an easy route to get all of those things while still being able to add, pretty much a good amount of crit chance or crit damage or headshot damage to your build. This is, again, something that would be pretty much entirely PvP, but you could make some sort of combination that might be suitable to your preferences. But a lot of players still don't like running the hazard protection pulse builds because it takes away a lot of everything else from them. Like they can't do as much damage, or they don't have the survivability. And again, you're not going to have that talent to rely on. So yes, you may have the resistance there, but is it going to be really as useful as you'd hope it to be? And that's going to be a question we're going to have to find out during testing. But overall, what I'm seeing is, for the most part, Ninjabike is probably going to be better suited for giving you some of those extra things that you couldn't normally get for a PvP build, rather than empowering a PvE build. And I think that's kind of going to be one of the focuses of the actual exotic itself. I think that if it does anything, it should probably focus more on PvP, because in PvE I can already see that it's probably going to be not very good. Now, with what I've just said in mind, I think in terms of DPS, Ninjabike builds are probably going to be at a disadvantage. Maybe, off the bat, they might start off a little bit better, but once you, activate a talent, or once you start collecting some buffs, whatever, I think that they're going to be behind the times. And of course, this is going to be the same with your damage-based skill builds, or your healing builds, or even your tanky regen builds. Yeah, it may sound great. Oh man, I could get this extra regen that I couldn't get before. But then you have to realize that you're no longer going to have the memento bag, or any of those talents that were really helping you stay alive and actually able to regen your armor. Again, like Adrenaline Rush, Intimidate. That bonus armor allowed you to constantly, regen your armor instead of losing it, while you're also getting that bonus armor. And in almost every build, the backpack talent provides that pretty much extra oomph that we're just not going to see from most ninja combos. And this brings us to what happened with classified gear in Division 1. While Division 2 does not technically have these classified gear items, many of the best sets really need that gear set backpack. Future Initiative will offer basically just way more healing than a couple of the extra, brand set bonuses could actually provide. Especially if you're talking about like working with a well-armed team, that 100% or 120% healing bonus is going to be just drastically better than 60% plus a few extra brand bonuses. It's just, it's just the way it's going to work mathematically. Sets like Negotiators, Strikers, Hardwired, they get a ton of their strength from that backpack. And not having that is going to kind of, make those brand sets, or, those gear sets pointless. Look at like the tanky shield builds. If you're talking about, these regen builds with Memento or Catharsis, they're just much more useful than it's going to be by adding whatever you can scrounge together with the Ninjabike. And this pretty much just runs the spectrum of every build that's in the game. The simple fact is that there's other exotics or backpack talents that are going to offer so much more than the Ninjabike, it at least seems like it's going to provide. It doesn't matter how it rolls. So yes, the Ninjabike might have some uses. It might fit into some niche roles that you can't quite achieve 100% in right now. Like the hazard protection or pulse resistance, some of the hybrid builds. But I think a lot of this is going to be, coming down to you not activating the backpack and getting these higher bonuses, right? I think the Ninjabike will have some nice just base numbers, but every other build with a backpack talent or with the gear set talent on their backpack is going to just overall perform better. And I think this drives to the true issue of the Ninjabike. It doesn't really make new builds, at least in Division 2. What it's going to do is just basically provide a different way to make very similar builds. They're not going to be new and exciting, which I think is what the game actually needs. I think it needs excitement, not kind of like a rehash. I mean, it's just, that's what the Ninjabike is going to do. It's going to provide a rehash for all the builds that we've already have in the game and not really drive anything new as far as I can see based on what we already have. And it is for this reason that I actually hope the Ninjabike avoids trying to compete directly with a lot of these builds. The fact is that I hope other new options open up for new build possibilities. For example, if you do most of the math, having a single red core or a single blue core or even a single yellow core, it's not really giving the player that much power. I mean, in some cases, if you fully focus on those things, it really is. But in the vast majority of hybrid builds, one blue or one red or one yellow, it's not making a huge difference when you compare it to what the talents or whatever are doing. And in many ways, having all three, like the Memento, isn't really the greatest. I mean, yes, having three cores on certain builds that can actually combine that synergy, really good. But having those 3 cores on, let's say, like a skill build, right? I mean, yeah, you get a little bit of tiny amount of extra weapon damage because you have, 15% extra weapon damage from the core. It's good, but it's not really going to be game changing for a skill build, right? Then the same thing for like a DPS build, adding 1 skill tier. I mean, a tier 1 versus a tier 0 skill, it's nothing to write home about. And in the end, what I guess I'm saying is that maybe the Ninjabike needs to maybe just avoid having cores at all. I mean, you could realistically take all the cores out and, let's say, add in 4 actual stats that aren't very common in the game or kind of hard to get, and make this a much better backpack. I mean, if you added 4 stats, like let's say you threw on 30% hazard protection, 40% pulse resistance, explosive resistance, let's say skill efficiency. I mean, there's plenty of other ones. I mean, with this, I guess, update primarily looking like it's focused on sniper builds, adding the hotshot gear in the other one. But I mean, again, it looks like it's doing a lot for sniper style play, right? So maybe adding a Ninjabike that has a new stat like 20% headshot damage reduction, that could be an interesting stat. That could be a new thing to put in the game that makes PvP play a little bit differently, or at least gives PvP some counters to some of this stuff, right? Because like I said, yes, the Ninjabike was kind of like a jack of all trades type thing, but it was also originally a PvP item. And I think having some sort of PvP bag that would be more anti-gank, giving players who focus mostly on like the PvE a chance to escape, or giving them a chance to survive an encounter, or even giving them the ability to actually like not drop their gear on the ground. I think that could be a good role to bring back to the Ninjabike. But as of right now, if we just look at it like the same old, where we're just, giving it the same thing that the Memento had, or giving it the same thing that every other exotic has, where it's locked in slot, then I think we're really looking at a lackluster bag that's not going to provide much. And anyway, there are tons of options that this backpack could offer. I mean, it could offer some new stuff, it could offer some good stuff. As long as it doesn't give, just like generic stuff that we already have, I think it could be good. If it goes the route of just, generic, this is what we have, this is all it's ever going to have, it might as well just come with a sticker that says stash me or deconstruct me. I mean, that's pretty much how I'm looking at it. It needs to be unique and needs to be different for it to actually stand out. And it needs to provide some things that maybe we can't get, so that it actually feels like a unique item. Otherwise, it's going to be just constantly compared to the Memento and constantly fall short of it. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.